Cool. So I know there's a bunch of folks that are in a Caltrans meeting right now. So we might see folks kind of trickle in here. But yeah, I don't know. I think we're probably ready to get going. Maybe if you want to kick it off by just giving some introductions and then we can jump right in.
Yeah, yeah, that works great. Just move over here. Everyone can see my screen, is that right? Do the classic, it's a meme about this. Sharing screen in front of a big group. I meant to leave this up during our intro, but this is a look at our technology. We've got a bunch of slides, but we do want to make this a back and forth. I will share these slides and the videos that you see with you, Justin, so we could share it out with listserv or anybody else that couldn't make it. What you've got is my name's Bradley Erickson. I sit up here in South Lake Tahoe, and I lead our sales team for North America. Justin and I overlap. We both spent about 10 years in the bike share and scooter share and e-bike share space, and recently reconnected after some work that we've been doing in California, which we'll talk about. I'm joined here by Matt. He leads our product and research teams. He's calling from our HQ in London. So thanks for making the time difference work, Matt, and thanks again, Justin, for facilitating. We're excited to chat. I've
Thank
got
you
a
so much.
oh yeah, I've got a couple of just framing slides for those are not familiar with us. I know a little briefer was sent out, but Viva develops technology designed to capture highly accurate and anonymous, mainly multimodal data to help track transit movements, travel patterns, network behaviors. Um, and there's this big emphasis on vulnerable road users. So we call them classifications, but pedestrians, bikes, scooters, different varieties of vehicles. We've trained our model to automatically go and recognize and classify and track the movement of these different vehicles in the field of view in the road space. It's built by privacy by design, right? So this is not CCTV. Matt will talk more about how we show that in reality. But for our customers, we get you access, easy, simple, real-time access to anonymized, highly accurate data. And we're coming off a win in Morocco at the International Road Safety Invention and Innovation Competition. We're up against a couple hundred other tech transportation type companies where we won the top award in their road safety division. So we'll talk through a little bit, but I think, like we all know, just given the audience here, we have a car culture here in the US. Our road networks today are a product of many decades of where vehicles are the main focus. And up until recently, the priority was just get as many vehicles moving as smoothly as possible, generally by adding more lanes and more roads, right? Like pedestrians were just drivers walking to and from their car, and cyclists were a dangerous annoyance. I think we're finally at this moment where many cities are realizing they have to change. We've learned that just adding more roads and more lanes don't solve problems. They create more problems than they solve, right? And populations are growing. COVID has changed a lot of things. More cars are pouring into these lanes, creating more congestion and emissions and danger. And so that's where we're really excited to see many innovative transportation companies come out and develop new models that get people out of their car to say, leave your car in the garage. But the problem in this process is we're introducing a whole bunch more vulnerable, generally inexperienced active transport users into networks that weren't designed to handle them to begin with, right? Like their scooters are on cycleway paths and footpaths, and they're retrofitted with little or no ability to predict the impacts. And so at its core is we're kind of bringing these vulnerable road users into more direct contact with frustrated drivers and more opportunity for danger, right? And so the question really becomes like, now what do we measure? What is success? How do we quantify success? And how do we plan for the future of road safety? Um, and I think in tandem, many of the current methodologies that much of our customers, we work with state DOTs, regional authorities, cities directly. Many of the tools and methodologies they use were like predated to World War II, right? They're designed to provide a limited number of metrics, generally in two dimensions, on a limited number of modes, and are most usually in the form of short-term surveys, right? So it's a limited snapshot, and what we're seeing is our customers, researchers, universities, cities, they're not finding these methodologies effective enough in pre-identifying road safety hotspots, evaluating if interventions are effective, right? Most interventions are really reactive. And a lot of this data for the folks in this world is incomplete, it's subjective, it's time consuming to pull together, and it's inconsistent. And so that's kind of our mini pitch as why we started Viva, and I'll turn it over to Matt in a minute. But essentially, we've built this platform based on multidimensional data. So we'll work with partners that recognize the importance of, like Justin was talking about, these understanding ecosystems holistically, right? The value of understanding all the interactions in the road space, and that allow us to predict changes across an ecosystem, and get in front of accidents and fatalities before they happen. That's our motto, and that's where Viva is trying to provide the answers to. We do this in the form of a technology that our team in the UK develops and manufactures. With their computer vision sensor you're seeing on the screen, it's essentially a couple lenses, a digital camera with a NVIDIA processor connected to a cell SIM card that that describes all the information it's seeing in the road space and sends it directly up to a dashboard that we give you access to. They're generally installed, banded on an existing signalized intersection or existing street furniture. We call it just height and power, but we are doing some really cool stuff with some customers. UC Davis is over on the right. They have a couple battery powered options for shorter term counts. We've done some solar powered and movable trailers. At the end of the day, if we can get enough height to prevent some occlusion from some vehicles that we're looking at and power the sensor, we're able to collect data anywhere. So last piece before I turn it over to the technical side with Matt, and he'll explain exactly how we do this. But what makes Viva stand out is our industry leading classification and accuracy levels. When you're thinking about deep research, planning for the future of road safety, planning for interventions to change high fatality networks, you need accurate data, and that's really where we end up winning some of these competitive RFPs or public bids. Our hardware approach allows us to deliver extremely high levels of accuracy, even in low light. So what you're seeing on the left-hand side is a footage running on some shareware AI algorithms you might find out of the box. And the accuracy levels are there, especially for vulnerable road users. There's some cyclists here, some pedestrians. They're just not picked up there or in low light. And on the right-hand side, you'll see Viva's version of that algorithm. So I'll pause there. I'll turn this over to Matt, but we are able to take questions either in the chat or feel free to come off mute. I think we've got 10 or so slides on the technical side of our product that Matt's going to lead, and then some time for case studies and questions, but feel free to interrupt us. Over to you, Matt, if unless there's any other questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bradley. Um, Really helpful introduction to kind of us, and I think just to quickly sort of say from my own point of view, my own enthusiasm for this is we're really in this sweet spot of sitting between a research and like a really cool piece of technology and applying it and bringing it to the real world. And that was my background when I was at university, was how do you bring new and cutting edge technologies to the real world to drive impact for local or state transport authorities. And really, it's that piece about having hardware, software, and research all coming out of the same place. And this slide is talking through our first product, which is smart traffic monitoring. So if you click through, Bradley, you can see, a number of different features that are focused on this. And this is really where the start of our product journey with VivaCity was. It was going, right, we want to be able to classify and see how different road users are engaging and interacting with different types of infrastructure, whether that's through volume classified counts, turning counts, or how long they're waiting there for. And that last one, dwell times, has been really impactful in a couple of different case studies, where finding that link of, okay, well, how long are they staying in a particular space, and how do we translate that through to action? And maybe we tweak or change signal timings, or maybe we go, how do we assess the impact of what we're doing with some of our active travel infrastructure? Next slide. Tracks is then the final kind of piece of the smart traffic monitoring puzzle. So it's looking at kind of visually drawing all of the different ways in which road users are engaging with the intersection or the junction or whatever that you're looking at. And this is something which, and I think we'll come on to later, is particularly interesting for research or academic institutes, because that path trajectory data helps you gain an understanding of how are people using the infrastructure. And I think one of the exciting things that we're doing with UC Davis is they're running a controlled experiment to look at unsafe pathways and use that to map against near miss or kind of different risk levels for safety interactions. Next slide. Which then brings us nicely to the two features that sit within the smart road safety product, which are speed and near miss. So speed is really important and kind of sits within this bucket of the safe systems approach, where monitoring and tracking safer speeds helps to give you a sense of exposure or risk. So how many vulnerable road users are there? What speed are the vehicles traveling at? And that across a region, whether that is a connected corridor or a city or bigger across a state, helps you identify, well, where are the hotspots of lots of vulnerable road users and high speeds and that clash happening. And then what we help local authorities with is diving into those specific areas. So you start with that system level that's looking at those type of data types, and then you narrow in and you go, okay, what are those behaviors? What are those different types of interactions? And that's where we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about the near miss feature.
I just want to double click into that last point that Matt made. We talked to a lot of cities that come to us that have Michelin mobility intelligence data, Placer AI data, high network level data. They're from heavy braking or from cell phone data. That can help cities or states understand these generalized hot pockets, but it doesn't help them super dive into why are these happening? What is going on? How can we show state authorities that maybe don't have the same planning or engineering backgrounds that we have? How can we help them visualize this interaction? And so that's what we're really trying to do, is help supplement these network data. So we can provide that same level of network data as we have the network, but where we show a lot of value is being able to double click and zoom into why these hotspots are occurring.
Yeah. And using this technology of near miss to complement other data sets that might be existing there, but at a smaller sample size, such as crash data. So we define a near miss as an almost accident that does not result in human injury. However, as you click onto the next slide, our near miss feature actually captures a whole range of different interactions, whether that is low risk interactions, medium risk, near miss, or even we've had one or two instances where there's been a collision between vehicles and vulnerable road users at our sensor locations. And what this feature is able to do is, as Bradley said, double click and go, okay, well, you might have only had the top of the pyramid. You might have only had one, two injuries or deaths that have occurred at a particular site. And of course, then, because it's a very emotive issue, you've got a lot of local or state authorities go and prioritize that area. But how do you get a wider sample so that you can start figuring out what is going to be the intervention that makes the most impact? How do you go from those one or two to the unreported ones, which particularly for vulnerable road users is such a big pain point and problem, which is often it doesn't get logged in police files or things like that. And being able to see those unreported collisions and then beneath that, those almost accidents or near misses is what really drives the value of this feature. If you click on to the next slide.
Just a quick question from
Oh yeah, jump in.
From the chat, How is asking, can we mount oh, looks like Bradley just answered.
Sorry. I was trying to type that out quick enough. Matt, there's a question in the chat about mounting devices on a moving platform like a bus. I know we've got this question before, and my gut said, and we haven't done it, is the direct answer. And gut says there's some limitations on our configuration and validation process, right? So our commitment to our customers is a very high, industry leading high level of accuracy. We lose that if we're not able to configure and validate on a fixed point. The commercial side of me saying I'd be open to exploring it with a big asterisk saying we probably won't have anywhere near the same level of accuracy, but curious if you have any other thoughts, Matt, about a moving location to host the sensors.
Certainly be a challenge and a first of its kind. I guess I'm interested in the reason why, where the question said to measure static road features. So is that why? Yeah, I'd be just interested in that follow up of why a bus would help with, or mounting on a bus would help with that, and what's the kind of the goal that's being trying to be achieved. And I comment only because we've had quite a few projects with buses or public transport um, uh, pieces. Go on.
I believe
the buses could possibly serve as a crowdsourcing moving sensors so that we can collect very dynamic information about road features using the buses that operate on fixed route, like the development of work zone features or the occupation of the curb spaces. So these types of information are usually not easy to capture via stationary sensors.
Yeah, I'm with you. So it's trying to capture like metadata associated with like the infrastructure of the road, things like that, rather than the road users on it. It's, well, what if there's some roadworks here, or what's the curb, or the how is there a pedestrian crossing here or something like that.
Yes.
So that not currently something that our products aimed at. I think we would supplement data sets like that. So once you've got some data that shows you, well, what are the different types of um, uh, road setup or infrastructure that's in place, and then our sensor would help with understanding the behaviors of how people interact with those different types of infrastructure. Probably be the answer to that one. I'll keep jumping on, although I can see a question in the chat, which I'll pick up. So to quickly touch on this slide and the next one, and then I'll come back to the question. One of the significant areas of development, which I think has got the academic and research institutes interested in our product, has been really diving into the detail behind this use case. So going the next layer on computer vision and rolling out a 3D model. And that is basically the key that unlocked having a more accurate near miss technology. So if you click through to the next slide, is being able to go, where is the center point for these different road users, and then link that to thresholds that we set in order to qualify a video that's going to be logged on the dashboard. And I'll pick up that point around how fast can the system detect a potential near miss. That is one where at the moment I think they're put up onto the dashboard within 5 minute or so data packets. So it's more kind of the camera, the software runs on the edge. but then the data packets are sent back to our cloud database, which is then where the user accesses the videos themselves. The video footage doesn't leave the device until it's been processed, and that's for privacy and anonymization reasons. We've explored a little bit that point around real-time use cases, and feeding that kind of data straight into an application that wants to use it now at a second-by-second level. Predominantly, that's been using our counts data set rather than our near-miss data set. But it's one which, as our near-miss data set gets better and more well understood, could be something that gets explored in the future. Bradley, do you want to jump in on any of that?
Yeah, I think that was a good summary of where we're at. I mean, I think we've got a variety of different offerings as well. Like in the UK, we've been around for a decade in the UK, just entered the United States market 2.5 years ago. There's a slight variety of applications of our technology. In the UK, we have a bunch of like signalized intersection control, and there's probably more thoughts about what we can do with interconnected vehicles and interconnected systems in the UK than in the US, where it's much more distributed. You know, we see cities having dozens of different vendors in this space. So it's certainly a thought, and Matt's the right guy in our team as we think about our product roadmap. But John, is there anything else you want to add about where that's coming from? Are you working on a project that is focused on that?
Thanks for your answers. And actually, like, I'm very interested in this kind of like near-miss detection because like if we can broadcast the information in real time via C-V2X, that I think there's
Yeah.
one potential to explore. And in micro simulation, we already can do that. And then, but I would like to see like some real world applications.
Yeah, I understand. That's the goal, right? That's what everyone's
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to get there. It's not our main focus yet.
I have a lot of questions. Like, have you ever thought about like since you can detect the trajectories of pedestrians or other vehicles, have you ever tried to think about like interact with the traffic control? Like for example, if it's actuated control, you can kind of dynamically extend the green time for the vehicles to kind of avoid the gap out. You also
Yeah.
can predict the pedestrian the movements to have, especially for those with wheelchairs, you can kind of like activate the green time to crosswalk earlier.
So we've got quite a few examples of that within the UK. And
Mhm.
actually, I think in general, that was kind of what I was hinting at with the use of our counts data, is
Mhm.
there's a lot that you can do for safety, just by understanding, are there pedestrians here or other vulnerable road users? How long do they need to wait for? And linking that to the traffic signals and
Yeah.
extending green times and um, doing anything that's kind of in that space that's taking direct action to prioritize them or optimize their flows through the network. I think on the near miss data side, it's about qualifying well what does qualify as something that's going to be valuable for that autonomous vehicle, because you don't want to be sending things that are less
Yeah.
risky. But then
Yes.
understanding what is risky is somewhat subjective, because I cycle around London and I get very close to buses every single
Yes.
day. But if that volume of data gets sent to autonomous vehicles, frankly, they would get overwhelmed with the number of things,
Yes. That
interactions
was
that
my
could be
question.
qualified as a
That,
near miss.
yes, that was my question, but I think you explained that you can move the threshold up and down, right? So that's why.
You can, you can change the thresholds, and
Yeah.
I think really that's what we're trying to steer people towards initially, is like, let's get a better understanding of this data set. Let's
Yeah.
qualify it first, and then let's start thinking about how we can feed that into real time applications. And let's use simple things like extending green times to pedestrians with counts data, where we know that we've got really good clear. A pedestrian is either there or it's not there.
Mm.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
Next slide. No worries. So probably best to bring this to life with a case study and example. And Bradley touched on this early on, which was we've actually recently been nominated for a bunch of different awards, which was pretty exciting, particularly the one in Morocco. And the reason for that has been because we've been able to draw this loop of installing a sensor at a location, getting an understanding of what the root cause is, and then working really closely with, I think the example shown at the beginning was Transport for West Midlands to go, well, what can they do about it in order to improve and reduce the number of crashes, the number of unsafe interactions at that site, and then closing the loop and doing a before and after comparison. And by having the sensors installed for a long period of time, they're really able to drill deep into what are the repeated behaviors. And one of the pain points that I think we've had in the past with customers is they go, well, you know, if you're only looking at a week or 2 weeks worth of data rather than 3 months or longer, things like school holidays, like when you schedule these things in, like it's very different, the types of behavior that will happen at different times of year. And so that's kind of been what's been really exciting on that front and has led to a number of the different awards and conferences that we've applied for. And then for one that's a bit closer to home for everyone on this call, if you click through to the next slide, I think this is my last one, Bradley, and then I hand over to you, is in New York City, we've been working on using that near miss data to inform traffic signal cycle phases. So in this case, we're not feeding counts data in real time to the traffic signals, but what we are doing is we're looking at behaviors that are occurring. We've highlighted 2 sites where they installed at these locations because the number of pedestrians and cyclists flowing through them was particularly high. And as you can see, kind of for different for each of these 2 different sensors, the speed or the mean speed was also high. So it's kind of like a high risk exposure. And then when you drill into, okay, well, what's going on in terms of the daily road user conflicts, and Bradley, I think, is helpfully clicking play on some of the interactions so you can see what's happening. It's that kind of behavioral analysis and deep dive, which is then able to go, right, we need to make a change here to prevent the things that are happening, which you can see on the screen.
Thanks so much, Matt. I mean, I just think to add on to that and to give another angle of our work with New York City DOT, which is now fostered into a relationship with the state, and we've been expanding around the state recently, is just the time to effectiveness, right? Like there are always going to be these long-term range planning plans that are required or tied to funding. You know, they're important to understand long-term trends. Viva can do that and help. We're procured alongside some of these long-range planning RFPs that they hire consultants and then they require the consultants to get our sensors to set up. But I think one of the great things that both as a vulnerable road user myself, but also in my role is we don't have to wait years for an analysis. And this is not necessarily a 500-page analysis. You know, we get lumped into this sort of competitive field with companies like Myovision or EcoCounter. You know, Myovision, a lot of the Caltrans districts that they work with, they're paying $400, $500, $600, $800 an hour to analyze a specific lane or intersection. And given their hourly rate, they're only able to analyze a couple hours or a couple days at max worth of an intersection. And then there's a whole bunch of time where the companies take to analyze this data that they collect. And what often happens is there are a couple 100-page reports that are hard to get to the answers quickly, right? And like this case study that Matt touched on in New York City, it didn't cost the city any direct dollars, right? They changed the signalization timing of the cyclists right away, and they were able to do that quickly, right? They were able to go into a dashboard that they have. They were able to highlight with Matt's road safety teams, like what's going on, What should we double click into? What should we analyze further? Why is this happening? And let's make this change quickly. And then let's pull before and after reports. And we did that in the matter of a couple weeks, right? Where I think this in the past was probably a several month or couple year long type of interaction. So I think this is this kind of summary of what we allow our customers to do. They can get super diagnostic. They can work in real time. They can work quickly. I really like that Matt's team has built what we call kind of a mini consultant analysis catalog, where there's these categories that of things that our customers want to double click into, right? Hey, I want to pull an intervention analysis of what's going on at this intersection where we made a countermeasure, right? And I'm able to easily pull in this tab. Or hey, I just want to look at classified counts. Or I want to look at turning counts or path movements. We're able to pull these into access with a click of a button in a website in a way that you can't do with a 300-page text analysis of interactions in an intersection. And as you can see, they're all complemented with largely video snapshots or images to help complement this data. So, and we supplement all this with direct downloads of the data, either through the website or piped over to your tools in an API. And so we're trying to meet our customers where they want to use the data, however they want to use it. If it's in our tool, if it's in your dashboard, if it's raw data, we're trying to make all that available really easily through a variety of these different options. So I think that's it for the overview of the technology. I'll let this video play that's just going to run through kind of clicking through the dashboard for the next minute or so. We do have some case studies that I'm more than happy to talk about, but we also have 20 minutes to chat. Are there certain, we want to pivot to some questions? Are there certain questions we want to go off mute and have an open conversation that we can dive into while Matt's still got a couple minutes before he has to jump?
Questions? Yeah, so thank you so much for the presentation. I had just some basic questions just about approximate costs, like for one intersection to instrument, like how much does that cost over, say, a week or a month or a year?
Yeah, great question. We're often lumped into well, Caltrans, they earmark 1 week counts at about $3,000 for an intersection. Our sensors are $3,000 to $5,000 one-time cost.
Okay.
And they come along with a subscription, $750 to $2,000, $2,500 a year. There's kind of a variety of different options that we give folks, but basically year one, you're looking at a maximum $7,500 for the sensor. Year two, that drops off, right, as you remove the equipment costs into a $2,500 fee for the year, right? And so we're starting to win some of these. This is why we're doing a statewide pilot with Caltrans and talking to a whole bunch of individual districts because their current, most of the status quo, the current contracts are they're going to a traffic counting firm and doing 1 week counts for about $3,000 for the statewide contract, or they're going to somebody like MileVision that for 72 hours is more than our annual fee. So we've tried to take the opposite approach to say, hey, regardless of the number of intersections or projects that you want to analyze, we're going to give you a fixed predictable annual rate that's capped at $2,500 a year. And so, we're hopeful. We're actually competing in the statewide bid for that traffic monitoring deal because, our pitch is, hey, you can get 1 week of counts from your current counter for the same cost as you can get a year of, either analysis or long-term traffic monitoring.
Right.
So
That's really cool. And then can you tell me a little bit about the process to install and calibrate? So I imagine every intersection is different. You've got to figure out, okay, where do I actually put the camera? And there's got to be some level of calibration that you need to be able to know where things are and to project onto the road.
thought I had a slide in anticipation of that question. Might have removed that. Essentially, what we'll do is most of our work is bound by the financial side, right? People come to us with grants, say, "Hey, Bradley, I've got $30,000. I'd love to look at all these intersections, but we can't. Where are our priorities?" So there tends to be this kind of initial scoping process. Here, I'll pull this up. We just rolled out in Colorado Springs our second phase. They have a smart grant. They have a couple dozen sensors that they've rolled out in Colorado Springs. And what we'll do with them is to start to say, hey, these are the high priority intersections we want to look at. Where are the trade-offs, right? Like we may need 2 or 3 sensors at a larger intersection to get full coverage. Do we need full coverage? Do we want to track counts? Where are the trade-offs? So we'll go through this, what we call scoping phase, to give out the pros and cons of the placement of these sensors at a high level based on the commercial considerations. Once we do that, they get shipped over to you. They're generally just pretty easily banded. Sometimes they're affixed to like a mast arm or something like that. They often do require a truck, a bucket truck to get the height that we need, but we do have some options if that's not available. But once they're up, our team goes through a manual validation. There's a little bit of remote support. So while utilities is up there banding the sensor to a pole, they're saying, hey, angle down, angle up. But once we have the general, hey, this is the field of view, this is what we want to track, Matt's team will go in. We actually draw the count lines and the lines that tell our machine learning algorithm, this is what you're going to focus on. And then over the course of sometimes it's a couple days, sometimes it's a couple weeks, we'll go in and manually validate and confirm that there's not these common problems of like maybe there's a light in the background that our algorithm thinks is a human, right? So we're going to call out some of these potential problems. Sometimes they don't exist, but we're going to go through sort of this manual validation process before signing off and saying, hey, yes, this is up to our standards, our accuracy commitments. Your contract starts now, right? Your data is live. During that whole time, we are collecting data. So like UC Davis just went through this process a few months ago. They went through that setup and validation process. They have a mix of permanent and movable temporary sensors. And they do have access to that data that we collect. There's just a little asterisk saying, hey, this is in validation mode. It's not yet confirmed. So I know that was a lot. Does that help kind of at least give you the basics?
So what it sounds like is that you provide the hardware to the agency. The agency can use their own favorite contractor to go physically install. But I guess there's some cooperation on your part remotely to make sure it's aimed the right way. And then is that true?
Exactly. Yeah. We'll do it full service. It just, being a largely remote and international based company, what we do in the times where customers can't use their local utilities, we'll go out, contract a electrician or somebody with the appropriate equipment. It just usually costs us.
Right. Okay. So I have another question, and then I'll let other people ask. So I have a question about using your data along, say, or in collaboration with other sorts of data. So, for example, if you can instrument a high volume or a set of high volume intersections for a year plus, there's probably some overlap with, say, Inrix or any of these OEMs that have that are starting to sort of gather data and present data at intersections or find places where there's harsh braking or where their own sensors on their cars find near misses. And I'm wondering if you've had any collaborations with or intend to have any collaborations with other sorts of companies or in the space that have maybe perhaps complementary sources of information.
Yeah, no, really great question. We've had a bunch of friendly exploratory type conversations with Inrix, Michelin Mobility, a bunch of other folks that are in the space. I think naturally because of what you just described, the complementary nature of their largely high large network data and our ability to zoom in can be great. I think we haven't found a path forward is on the commercial side. At the end of the day, most of the cities or DOTs that we work with have a finite budget, and most in our interactions have either decided, hey, I want to go look at, LA, for example, is 800 miles of dangerous roadway that they need to analyze in their opinion, and they like the ability to zoom in with Viva. It's just commercially difficult for our hardware to cover those 800 miles. So we haven't found a commercial path forward, but I'm sure there are customers out there that buy both and are combining that data on their end. We are in the middle of launching a program with the state of Kansas. So we won an innovation grant, the Kansas DOT. We're going to launch at 50 intersections in Wichita alongside a network of air quality monitors. And so they're hoping to visualize and map out the impact on emissions and air quality as it relates to modal shift to active transportation. Along with all the other things that we talk about, right? Road safety. They've got a bunch of dangerous intersections that we've identified. But a key component of that is all this data is going to pipe into a state dashboard. It's like a state DOT dashboard that's publicly available that includes some of that large network data. And so I think that's what we'll see is a real life example of a customer using our API along with other inputs, including things like air quality, right, outside of just road safety stuff, into one dashboard to get a more holistic viewpoint. But Viva's interaction there, we sourced and are working with the air quality partner, and we're going to pipe all that data. But they've got a dashboard that they want to collect everything into already set up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Matt had to jump. He dropped his email here. I will send out an email with these slides, and I'm more than happy to give. We've set up a demo version of our dashboard where what you're looking at right now is New York City, but we can give you all demo access. You'll see the functionality of the dashboard. It will be dummy data, but I'm more than happy to do that as a follow-up for everyone here. Yeah, we've got a question.
Oh, I have one more question. So I know your solution is actually camera with edge computing capabilities. So do you also provide a solution that to tie to the existing CCTV cameras instead of using your own cameras?
Yeah, we've done it. I mean, I think we weigh we weigh the pros and cons. It's not where we primarily go to market, and I'll show you what I mean or why I think that. We've done it largely in the UK. We did it with the state of Georgia, right? It's a natural question to say, hey, Bradley, Viva, can you use some of these existing cameras that we already have installed and not have to deal with utilities getting involved? The downside is really accuracy rates, right? Like when we're taking where's my slide here? When we're taking a feed that just the inputs aren't as high quality for us to analyze, our ability to effectively, I think the short answer is it will be better than the current status quo, but it will not be up to somebody like Matt's team's standards where, we've gotten to market where we're contractually committed to 97% plus accuracy in our classified counts. So we've done it to varying degrees of success. It's just not to the level. If your goal primarily is let's get the most accurate data we can, that's not going to be our recommendation. If there's no other option, we have to use these, and maybe that's the only way. You can make the argument that, hey, this will be better than the status quo. It's just, I think anytime where you have a data set where there's a bunch of these asterisks or false positives or inaccuracies, it really becomes,
Yes.
almost more
So
difficult to work with.
and actually we can think about that in a different directions. Like think about like how we can leverage the AI tools to extract the information we want from the CCTV cameras. I know we won't be perfect, right? But for example, if you talk about counts, it should be very accurate. But if you talk about DMVs, I think the accuracy would be very low. So I
Yeah.
mean, that was something like think about what kind of use cases can be done with the current infrastructure support powered by AI. So we are going to have a project in this area, so maybe we can touch upon on that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
We're not this $100 million VC funded company, and so when we think about opportunities like this, it's just a commercial trade-off. We have a customer in the UK pays us near seven figures to analyze a whole bunch of their data collected from their cameras, knowing that there are these limitations that occur just because we're using their technology. And so I think we're happy to explore it. We just got to make
Yeah.
sure that we're covering our internal costs to be able to do that, right? Like what we're offering today is an out-of-the-box solution. You plug, you set it up, you're ready to go. There's a lot more manual work involved in the solution that you're talking about. But yeah, I'm more than happy to
Yeah.
explore that with you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Linda asked in the chat, in many cities, when separate contractors are hired to install traffic monitoring devices, improper installation can lead to misconfigured detection systems and reduced accuracy. Wouldn't it be advantageous for Viva to handle the installation directly to ensure optimal system performance and maintain the quality of service? I understand that funding is often limited, but this has been a significant issue for cities like Las Vegas, where improper setup has compromised system effectiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. Really great question. We're always happy to do it, right? I think it maybe I'm reading this as the commercial side being limited here. That is often the primary limiting factor of any new customer that we work with, right? There's a finite budget, and the trade-off becomes, hey, do we want to spend $3,000 on installing one intersection, or do we want to spend $3,000 and get another intersection to analyze and use internal resources? Most of the time, customers themselves will decide that the latter, right? They want a bigger case study, or they want to look at, more intersections, help save lives and create a safer scenario. In either scenario, whether we send out a contractor, whether we do it ourselves, or local public utilities do it, we're on what we call remote support. So our folks are back in the factory, connected to a camera feed on the phone with whoever's installing it. And before that person drives away and leaves the job site, we're making sure that the cameras are set up appropriately. I think long term, the rare instances where we have to send somebody out are things like a new location where there might be glare at certain times of day that we might not be aware of, or low light conditions. We tend to perform stronger than competitors in those scenarios, but there are the occasional time where we'll have to go back out and adjust that because of some low light or glare. So I don't know if that answers it directly, Linda. I think in a perfect world, yes, absolutely. Do we go set it up and do it ourselves? I think just most of our customers are choosing to direct those funds into additional products, additional sensors, rather than pay us to go install it. But either way, like contractually, like you get the subscription to the dashboard. We're not starting to bill you. Your effective date of that doesn't start until the systems are confirmed by multiple members of our team and with our customers that they're configured properly. With any subscription business, you obviously we want you to renew at the end of the year, and I think a big component of that is make sure that you're configured and collecting the appropriate data. I think one tangential thought is at the end of a year or at the end of New York City came to us, they had a bunch of these hot spots that they wanted to fix very quickly. If we are able to fix them, right, and show a significant reduction, make a much safer intersection, our customers have usually decision time to make an option, right? We can take them down and move them elsewhere, move them to another hotspot and spend 6 months there. Or we can leave them up and maybe turn off the near miss feature that's a little bit more expensive and have it be a basic counter and collect long-term counts. So we do give our customers the option. They own the equipment. That's where a lot of our state DOT relationships are, where it's kind of like the ATRC lending library, where we'll sell a state 50 or 100 sensors. They'll generally have a list of high priority projects that they want to focus on in phase one. But our hope is that we help make a bunch of these hotspots safer quickly, And if we get it to a place where we feel comfortable, we encourage our partners to move them around. Go take down that sensor that you own, move it to another hotspot across the state. So we give folks that option, and they're all warranted. So warranted for 5 years. If anything ever fails, we just replace it. We are able to remotely upgrade these devices. So we just kicked off this conversation talking about our model training on additional classifications or new vehicles. If we do make updates to either our model or different classes, we're able to push those out remotely. So you're not left with an outdated piece of technology that you can't work with. So
I have
hope
a
that
quick
helps.
question.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's quick. I want to know, what are the sorts of things that go wrong with installations, like either mechanically or electrically, like you lose power, you lose connectivity. Like what are the problems that you face?
Yeah. Good question. I'd say we've had a handful of issues across a couple hundred sensors. It's not a tremendous percentage here in the States. But the issues that have come up are larger around the wiring, the power supply. UC Davis chose a pole. We're working with their team, say, hey, this is a really great location. This is where we want to look at. Hey, there's a street light pole. Let's go plan on that. We scoped it out. We sent them the sensor. We get up there. We realize that, I'm not an electrician, but some of the wires that we were expecting to use weren't able to be spliced off and power an appropriate amount of power. I think those are some of those instances where we kind of we assume that the infrastructure is there and should work, right? It's powering a street light, and it's difficult to plan ahead of that. So I think some of those issues really just around, are we getting the power that we need uh, from the existing infrastructure? Caltrans is doing part of what UC Davis is separately. We've got like 5 different projects going on with UC Davis, but one of them that they're representing Caltrans on is at a bunch of different intersections in Davis, where ourselves and MileVision will be plugged in at the same intersection. And part of their evaluation, they're going to publicly, report on the performance of accuracy levels, but also ease of installation. So that paperwork will be public in the next 6 months or a year, and we'll talk in depth from Caltrans's perspective of installing. But usually it's a plug and play as long as we have power supplied to it. I think it's really cool what Davis is doing here in this photo. I touched briefly on it. Where am I? We just got them a telescoping pole and actually a Jackery whole home generator. So we've got like a really big battery in a waterproof wheeled case. So they're able to wheel it up, affix it, you kind of strap it with some security straps to an existing street furniture and just raise this pole 15 feet up, and it's powered directly in by a battery. So I don't know. That's the long answer. Is as long as we've got a consistent power supply, keeping our cameras on, I don't really know of any other categories of problems that we have outside of low light and glare. Um, so hopefully that helps.
Okay.
Apologies,
Awesome.
we have another who needs this room here in
Oh,
a few
yeah.
minutes. Sorry, I don't want to cut anybody off if there are questions. Is there a way we can contact you or
Yeah, if anybody has additional questions, feel free to send them to me, and I'll make sure to connect you all to Bradley. And Bradley, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to following up with you. Let's find some time, maybe later this week or early next week, to continue the conversation.
Absolutely. I'm around. I'll share these slides. We didn't get through a lot of these use cases I was really excited about. I think I'm really excited about the people in this room that are working on such a variety of projects. And you'll see these in these slides as a snapshot of, what we're able to do when we have this data. So I'm really excited to further those conversations and welcome any questions. I'll drop my email here in the chat, but then I'll follow up with you, Justin, with these slides and additional resources. But thanks again, everybody. This was a fun conversation. Thanks for having us, and thanks for the advocacy, Justin.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.